Like cooking, everything has a recipe.
A set of instructions to follow in order to gain a certain result.
Music is no different.
Be it ingredients for a dish, a set list for an amazing show,
Or a release strategy for a successful launch.
these are all recipes.
Hi, we're your hosts, Sean.
And I'm Brandon.
Come and join us in our kitchen as we go through the Music Maker's Cookbook.
Let's get cooking.
Welcome to the Music Maker's Cookbook, the podcast where we help independent artists cook up recipes for success in the music industry. My name is Sean.
And I am Brandon.
And today we've got a really interesting episode that's going to be full of really awesome information in it. So stick around and stay tuned. Just kind of jump right into it. We're going to be exploring how you can achieve your music goals no matter what the limitations you face are. You know, lack of resources is a big issue that a lot of artists face, especially when they're just starting off. But in today's world, there's a lot of ways around them and a lot of things you can do to still get the ball rolling, start getting fans, start getting your music out there, and get really awesome sounding stuff.
Yeah.
Start building, even if you have like a limited budget or limited resources or not able, like maybe limited transportation, whatever it may be. We're going to talk about a lot of ways to help you find and reach your specific goals.
Yeah. I mean, so baseline, right? Lack of resources is always an issue. It just deals in the economics of it and the scarcity within the economy itself. You can apply the economy term to anything. So it shouldn't be a deterrent, though, to your goals, right? This shouldn't be a barrier for you to get from this place to the other. Like, you should still be able to do this, but you have to be willing to think differently. You have to be willing to do different things, and you have to be willing to make sacrifices that achieve your goals later on, right? Like you were saying, there's never really been a better time to do this. I mean, we have so much available to us that the barrier of entry and the barrier of access has been lowered substantially. So you can go out and you can buy some recording equipment yourself that is actually affordable these days. I mean, just think about the 70s where nothing was affordable in this industry and it was so complex of a learning curve, you couldn't do it on your own, right? You can do this on your own now. So you might as well just go out there and give it your best shot. Now, how you tackle that is all dependent upon what your goals are and what you want to do and how much of a sacrifice you want to make. So if you do want to learn this stuff, there's going to be a longer learning curve.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to, there are also other things that we have alluded to and we will talk about that you can do instead.
I just looked it up. For $230, you can drive on down to your nearest Guitar Center, get an interface, a microphone and headphones and an XLR cable to get all of it going for $230. And that'll allow you to get higher quality demos out there. And the more you learn, the better you get into it. You can make probably really good sounding songs, even with just that. So for $230, you can get started, which still may be too much of a barrier for entry for some people. And there's definitely ways around that as well. But before we go really much deeper, I just want to say that when we say lack of resources, there are plenty of different things we're going to try to cover, which is, I brought up earlier, lack of transportation, lack of funding, lack of expertise, or, you know, lack of time or whatnot. But a lot of times when I see musicians just starting out, one of the things they have in most abundance is time.
Yeah.
And even if you don't have funds to pay for mixing or buy gear, or you don't have a ride to the gig or whatnot, there's ways around it. If you have time, that is honestly the most powerful thing you do have, and
it's
you can't
the most
leverage
scarce resource as well.
Yeah, because everyone's limited.
Yeah, you can't get time back.
Nope. So if you want to save some money and spend a lot of time to look up how to do certain things, like if you want to record yourself or whatnot, or you want to spend your time to give to other people to help them then give you things that you don't have, you can leverage it to offer up as a resource that you can then trade.
Yeah.
And we'll dive more into the specifics of that in just a second.
And like what you're highlighting right now is that you're dealing with a system of scarcity, right? Like where you put an investment in one place, you're going to have to make up in another way in another place, right? So you're always trading off. This isn't like I'm saving time here, right? Because like ultimately, like you're going to be paying for that in other ways, right? So like while you're saving time and maybe you can allocate that to better use, maybe that's where a good return is, right? We're not going to get super far into depth with that today, but let's say you pay somebody to do something like as a service, like how we're contracted out by a lot of people. They're saving time in the long run because they don't have to learn how to mix. They don't have to learn how to do this. They don't have to put the time into it, and they can better use that other places. But generally, there's a trade-off. There's a trade-off at every single point. There's an opportunity cost at every single point. So how you use this to your advantage and to your allocation is key.
I knew you'd bring opportunity cost.
I had to.
It's kind of like you always bring opportunity cost in, and I always bring in if you're not having fun, you're not taking it seriously enough. Those are the two things that we always say.
We do,
and we will not stop. That's how I snuck in my saying, by the way.
I like it. I like it.
But so just kind of jumping in, we're going to go through kind of the whole process of what it takes to make music, put it out there, and come up with some basic ideas that you can use to still get things done, even if you have limited resources. So kind of starting off, at the recording process, you have your song, you've been playing on your guitar or your piano or whatever, and you've been singing along to it, and you've composed your song, and you want to record it so that you can get a nice sound, get it out there, start having fans listen to it, something you can promote, sell, have people listen to, but maybe you don't have funds, you can't pay for a mix engineer, or maybe you have, well, I'm just not going to dive into that, all the possibilities, things you might have, but let's say you are looking to record and you don't have the funds to go to a professional studio and pay it, and you don't have the time potentially to spend buying new gear and learning the whole process of recording and mixing and all that. Something that you might not know about both Brandon and I is that we met in a community college.
We did.
In our area.
We've never spoken about this on the podcast. Yeah.
That's how we were introduced to each other. And we were both in a program called Sound Recording Technologies, where it taught people, engineers, how to record, mix, master, and kind of the basics of recording technology, software, hardware, the whole kind of thing.
Yep.
Now, after that, I went and got a job in live sounds. I did a lot of live sound, built up my own studio, and then we got reconnected. Brandon went off to U of M to further his education and dive more into the weeds of all these things that happen, which is a very, very nice university. University.
Yeah, definitely.
So we started at a community college. He went to there's private universities that offer these kind of programs. And so the whole range of schools, it's not a uncommon degree and course that these things offer.
Right.
And the reason I bring that up is because when we both started in Schoolcraft, and even when you were in Michigan, we were trying to learn our trade of mixing and recording and mastering. And we would jump on the opportunity of any musician who wanted to record, and we would either do it for free or dirt cheap. And while we started off in Schoolcraft, they had had some cool gear and whatnot, and a couple practice rooms and things like that you could bring people into. At U of M, they have a really nice studio.
They do.
At Wayne State, which another one of my buddies went, they've got a very nice studio. At Lawrence Tech, which I have another buddy who went to, they've got access to a very nice studio. And a lot of times, if you contact these students that are going for these degrees at these schools, you can say, hey, I'll give you a full day or 2 days or however much time you can give them, and say, I just want one song or two songs or just one song, even just be as basic as you can, and say you have as much time as you need. That's what you're trading. And you can try as many things as you want on my song to learn and grow and make it sound the way you want. And they're students, they're still learning. It may be a little bit riskier or whatnot, but what you're gaining is a bunch of different options, because they're going to be trying new things, and you can be like, oh, I like how that sounds, and try to help, work with them to get a really cool sound. And then also you might have access to a studio that if you were paying for would cost you hundreds of dollars an hour, if not more.
It's true.
Yeah. The one at U of M, the one at Wayne have $100,000 consoles in them, a huge mic locker, all these amps, gears, all these things that you'll be able to play with and try out with your sound without having to pay a premium price.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's important to illustrate here too, is that there's two people that win in this scenario, right? Like, you're winning because you get to actually put your music down onto the computer, and then obviously you'll be able to export that out to your fans, right? You'll be able to put that out. The other person as well is gaining experience by recording you, right? So you're actually working as a tandem. Now, you do pay for it in a certain way. Not only do you pay for it probably monetarily, but it won't be that expensive, but you have to pay in other ways. So like, maybe the product won't be as polished as you might want it, right? Maybe the time won't be used as efficiently because you have to think about the processes, and then maybe something goes wrong, right? So that's where you kind of start to pay a little bit more instead of like monetarily, right? And what does that involve? More time, right? Because like, you'll probably want to do some more revisions, or you'll want to re-record something, or you have to wait for the engineer to fix this issue with the console or something like that. Then all of a sudden you're trading that. The dollar value kind of like gets a little weird at that point, because then it's like, how much do you value your time? We're not going to go into that because that's like so in depth, but that is just like, that is a slight caveat to that, right? So a good example of this is like, if you don't have dental insurance, you can go to these schools, right, and that have dental programs, and you can get low cost dental work done. It's a totally valid way to do it at the cost of a student doing it to you, though. Sure, it's supervised by teachers, right? But it's not like you're getting an actual dentist to work on your teeth, right? So you do pay in other ways, and you typically pay, in this case, an experience, right? So while you're getting a lower monetary value out of it, right? You're paying less. You're paying for it in other ways. So they could mess up your teeth, right? So like, that's just what happens. But but it's totally a viable way to do it. And obviously the music thing is way less invasive than getting dental work done. So let's just put that out there, right? It's not as serious probably. And I don't mean that to say that music's not serious, but it's not going to give you a headache when you wake up in the morning and you have an abscessed tooth, right? So yeah, just had to put that out there.
I love how you went on this whole thing about dental.
I had to, dude.
But yeah, so those are some positives you can get for trying to work with local schools and students and whatnot. A couple things is a good way to find out if your school offers that kind of program. You can go online and see if they offer some sort of audio degree. Now, often schools call them kind of different things. The schools we've been to and other schools we've seen, they've called it things like music production degrees, sound recording technologies degrees, just a base music degree. They might offer
performing arts technology. That's what U of M calls it.
Yep. Just sound engineering, many different things that it could be under. So just maybe look and see if they offer it as a degree. Oftentimes, schools have a front office that you can call and just kind of ask about it to see if that's a degree they offer.
Yep. I know for like, speaking from experience really quick, Western has this program, Western Michigan, and I applied there and I had to do like this whole tryout and everything, and I got accepted. Didn't end up going though, but they do actually offer that specific service where they'll bring people and they'll bring bands in for a smaller monetary value, and the students get experience working on it, right? So which is really cool. And I know Soundscape out in Royal Oak does the same thing. So if they're out there. You just have to look for the opportunities.
Exactly. And then if there's a way to find specific students or whatnot, oftentimes they have small setups at home so they can do their homework and they can practice or whatnot. So instead of going to a nice school studio or whatnot, you still have access to an engineer who does have at least more of an investment or of a knowledge than you might have, and it can be worth going to them. Once again, trading time and for them to learn and get experience. A good way to, if you do reach out to these students or do reach out to try to get yourself in there, it can be beneficial if you have just a rough demo of your music.
Yeah, very much so.
To kind of showcase, hey, this is what I'm trying to do, and put out your best song, your best take, just record it. You can just record it on your phone. It doesn't have to be a fancy one. But just try to make it like showcase your best foot forward so that the student or the engineer or the school or the program is like, oh, this is a dope song. We're going to have fun. And there's could be a lot going on or whatnot, or this showcase something different that would be helpful for our students to learn.
Absolutely.
So whatever you can to put your best foot forward, that's kind of how you would present it.
Yeah. I get demos on phones all the time, by the way. So like, this is a totally valid thing to do when you go to a studio versus going to like a school studio, right? So it's just a valid way to operate. And sometimes like the demos are really damn good too. So yeah. And it's like the energy is really good. I'm like, damn, this is really nice. And then we build around that. And and it gives you a nice foot forward. So that way you and the engineer are both on the same page and everybody's happy.
I've had clients show me quote unquote demos where it doesn't happen often, but sometimes they show me their demo and I'm like, there is nothing I would improve in mixing this.
Right.
Just
sometimes it's just like, it's like, ah, man, like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to help you here.
I'll just master it and we're good to go. We'll save you $100 or whatever, a couple $100.
Exactly.
So that's kind of some ideas we have for recording, getting into a studio and getting things recorded.
Yeah. And usually after recording comes mixing, right?
Mixing.
So this is obviously a really part in the production process, and mixing can be about the same thing too, right? I saw what you're doing there. Playing with the little knobby knobs.
It's my boards, my faders.
Yeah, man. And like, you can get mixing done, I'm sure, by these schools as well. I don't know though what they would charge. I have no idea how that would actually operate, but you would have to inquire about that. I'm assuming that if they record you, they're more likely to do that. So
in my experience, when I was at Schoolcraft and we recorded these bands, we did do a couple bands or a couple artists that we recorded as a full classroom. What happened afterwards is that every student individually mixed their song, and then they sent it to the artist, and the artist got to pick which one they preferred.
Okay.
So if you go through
when they were
program,
going through like Studio A and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So if you're able to go through a program like that, you might have tons of options to pick from.
Which is actually interesting. I'm glad you brought this up because when we were going to Studio A, it's no longer open. Studio A used to be in Dearborn, Michigan. Totally shut down, unfortunately, which is cool. A great studio. A lot of really big people recorded there. It's actually kind of legendary around here. But they shut down. We would actually go in to record like a band, maybe once a semester, and we'd do 3 songs. And then each one of us would get the multi-tracks of those 3 songs, and we'd have to deliver mixes to our professor by a certain day. And actually, it's interesting because like we had probably 10, 15 kids in the class total, 10, 15 workstations. You're getting 10 to 15 different mixes from people, which is kind of cool. And I think they get sent to the band.
They did.
Yeah. And which is really cool. And you're having our professor who is, has worked in the field for years, right? And he does this stuff on his own, right?
And he can guide the students if they have questions or whatnot.
Exactly. And he's overseeing this and kind of cultivating like, hey, I like what you did here, or maybe this was too dynamic here. Let's bring this up, right? It's really cool, kind of a cool process. And then you have this interesting thing where it's not really a competition, but it's kind of a competition at the same time. And you can kind of pick from the cream of the crop, so to speak, from the class. So kind of cool.
Because sometimes the professor will make it known like which one the band goes for, and it can be kind of cool to be like, oh shit, my song I mixed is on this album.
And you wear it as like a badge of honor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's one way you can go to kind of get somebody to mix it.
Yeah, I want to touch on this really quick because I'm not sure how this actually works into, and I think it's maybe worth mentioning here, is that universities can be really interesting on how they determine intellectual property rights. I don't know much about intellectual property rights, and I'm not a lawyer, so you need to go talk to somebody in law that deals with this kind of stuff.
That's true.
But when us being in school, right, technically those mixes that we did for Schoolcraft owns rights to. I don't know how it works if they hire you or hire the university as an outside contractor, but that would be something to at least inquire about before you commit to it. I imagine that it's just normal contracting, but that is something to kind of note though, because they can get murky waters really quick. So just be mindful of that. That could be a thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you go through a program like that, make sure like, hey, who owns the rights to this?
Exactly.
Afterwards?
Yeah.
Is it kind of like a labels case where they own the masters and you own the song?
Yeah.
Or how does it work out? Do you own the final masters?
Exactly.
What's going on?
Because like let's say you, the listener right now, is going to school right now. All the schoolwork that you're doing, all the papers, all the research that you're gathering, whether you're doing videos, you're doing essays, you're doing whatever, you own none of the rights to that. Your school owns all of the rights to that, which is a really big bummer. So you know how like teachers ask like, hey, can I use this next year in my class? It's like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess so. Well, I mean, you don't really have a choice, right? I guess you could say no, but
after listening, like, okay,
exactly. They own the rights. Like they just do it out of a common courtesy, right?
Yeah.
So that's just something to note too. I just thought I'd throw that in there while we were talking about it. I thought about that.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Moving on from that, other ways you can go to get mixing done, not for necessarily cheap, but on a budget, if you're limited, is through online services like Fiverr or SoundBetter, or even local studios around you might have programs or whatnot. I have a buddy who runs a studio in Ohio, I believe by Columbus, that he got the funding.
Ooh, I'm sorry.
Don't bring football into this.
The Michigan came out.
Yeah, Ohio does suck. But anyways, if you're from Ohio, we appreciate your music.
Yes, thank you for listening. But fuck Ohio State.
Man, dude.
I'm going to get canceled.
Probably. Your football opinions are too strong.
I know. They're so strong.
We should just bulk record all of our episodes when it's not football season.
We should avoid this. We should avoid this time of year at all costs.
So we can have Happy Brandon and
Absolutely.
Calm Brandon.
Yes.
Anyways, what he did is he got funding to build his studio from a grant from the state.
Oh, nice.
So it has a bunch of local community programs through the studio.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah. So they offer in the space budget ways for local artists to get studio time on a much cheaper time because it's funded through the city as well.
I've seen a couple of those online too, actually, like just through documentaries and stuff. And it was like, well, this is really cool. Like they're offering public access to studios for like either like low income areas or marginalized areas, you know what I'm saying? And it's just a really cool idea. Yeah. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. So you can see if maybe your local studio offers something like that. In addition to that, this one specifically also has like a musician highlight time where musicians can come and perform in front of other musicians or other people in the community and kind of build connections that way. And they'll for free, they will record a video and put it on their website, and they can give you a copy of your performance video, which would be great for an EPK, great to send to other places to get gigs, great to put on your own platforms. You know, it's a good way to get other resources as well for free or for a relatively low cost.
Yeah.
So that's another functionality you can look into. There's a local place by us called the Plymouth Arts and Recreation Center. It's kind of like everything that's in the building functions technically as a nonprofit. I know at one point there was a rehearsal room and a recording room that was in the building. And I think, once again, like, there were like a cheaper cost to get in and things like that. So that's one way you can get mixing done. I'm just going to let you finish on the last one. But before, another thing that popped in my head is sometimes music venues are able to record to a USB or kick out to another like external source. So if you're recording, if you have your own interface or whatnot, they can kick out the tracks to you. That's a way for you to get albeit not a studio mix, you can get your songs done in a live setting. You can put out a live album. And if it's like a Midas board or whatnot, they can even record to multi-track. So that's could be another cost-effective way to get access to your recordings that then you could send off someplace to.
It's a great point.
To get mixed.
And usually that's not upcharged, right?
Usually not. I mean, if you have to get if you have to buy a USB stick, if you don't have your own, they'll charge you for the USB stick. But if you bring your own and say, hey, I'm looking to have a recording of this. Pardon me, the coffee. You can bring in your own USB stick and say, hey, can you just record it to this, be it stereo or multi-track or whatever. And oftentimes they're willing.
Usually it's a non-issue. So I've heard of nightmare scenarios where it's like, I can do that. And then they forget to press the button. Womp womp. Sometimes that happens. So you just have to be willing to be like, either kind of like, hey, did you press the button? You know what I'm saying? Or be willing to be like, okay, if we didn't get it this time, then we'll get it next time, right?
So start off your set. You can start off your set by saying, hey, thanks everyone for coming out here. Make some noise because this performance is being recorded for a live.
And you can just stare at the engineer the entire time. This thing is being recorded in front of a live studio audience or whatever, you know? Just mean mug them the entire time.
And be like, it'll be on Bandcamp afterwards. So if you want to support me, you can check it out and buy this concert that you're currently at.
Exactly.
I'm like, oh shit, I have to record.
I want to make a quick point too, is that local studios around you as well also kind of means the big studios too. There will be tiers of engineers there. Typically, I've seen that a lot around here, is like, you can hire this guy, he's new on the staff, he's $65 an hour, right? Versus the guy who owns the place or has been on the staff and he's $125 an hour, right? You can also find things like that. So if you're willing to shell out a little bit more money for a more polished and professional sound, although you might not always get that, right? So you have to be willing to vet and put in your time to really get to know some of these engineers that you're paying big bucks for. That is an option too. But then you save on other costs along the way, right? The opportunity costs, you save on costs down the line. But like we said, if you're on a budget, those options are perfect. But I just want to throw that in there, that bigger studios are totally valid too, and that you can find pricing differentials in them as well.
Just think about what resource you are trying to like, what are you limited on, and what do you have to do to overcome that limitation?
Definitely.
Because whatever your situation is, what you can do and the route you want to go can vary. This episode, we've kind of been focusing on the cost limitation or the gear limitation or the knowledge limitation, not so much on time or not so much on any other aspect. So this, just as a whole, this is more so if you've got time, these are ways you can do to save on cost, save on all these other aspects.
But
you have another, going back to mixing real quick, you've got one more option that is relatively new.
And it's getting better every day. And that's getting your song mixed by AI applications.
As a recording, mixing, and mastering engineer, this hurts.
This one hurts to talk about because it hurts me too.
But it gives you good enough.
It does. It does give you good enough. And we've kind of learned from the mastering side of AI things that it gets you good enough sounds. And they add more functionality to it every day. And I see a lot of apps getting really creative with what they do. Like, you can send your song off to a specific like mastering studio and they run it through this specific chain. But it's like, I don't know. It's like all their tube gear and all their analog stuff. And I don't know. It's weird. I don't know it like the back of my hand, but we all know Lander is the most popular service out there. And mixing AI is probably around the corner, but maybe not as close as we think as well, because there's so many different aspects that go into mixing that it's going to be really hard to cultivate that for a while. But I've noticed that I forgot what DAW it was. And I don't want to say that it was Pro Tools because I don't know for sure, but I know that there's a DAW out there that specifically records your moves in the DAW that is artificially learning how to mix itself, right? It might be Avid. I think I remember seeing that, and that is scary because it will literally take what we're doing on the screen and start recording that into its brain and then being able to synthesize that out and coming up with plans on how to mix. I mean, iZotope products already do a certain thing. I don't know how they're really relied on AI.
See, that's what I was going to say. Yeah. Like Waves has AI channel strips.
Right.
iZotope has AI channel strips. A lot of times AI in terms of mixing is relegated towards channel strips where you say, hey, this is the instrument. This is the instrument. This is the reference. Get it as close as you can.
Very individualized multi-tracks, individualized instruments, things like that.
Yeah. So there's no like lander where you press a button and your song's mastered.
Yeah.
You still need to go to an engineer who maybe has these resources. And a lot of these softwares aren't cheap. So there's still an up cost investment if you do go that route. But if you're working with somebody who does have these softwares or access to it or whatnot, it could speed up the process or give you good enough results or
definitely
whatnot.
And that hurts my feelings. So I don't want to talk about it anymore. I'm getting upset.
Okay, we'll move on to performing then. If you're struggling with limited resources, but you really want to get out there and, get in front of potential fans and perform your music so that you can build up your fan base and your community, a great way to start without the initial investment of, unfortunately, there's some venues that are pay to play at the start. Try to avoid them as much as you can.
Yeah, they are.
Just don't do them. That's the best way to avoid that limitation.
Definitely.
But if you can get to an open mic, there's, at least in this area, there's a lot of open mics around. In most places, they have a couple of open mics.
Lots of coffee shops.
Lots of coffee shops, occasionally bars and whatnot.
Yep.
Try to go to these and not focus on maybe building fans, but focus on building relationships. Because obviously, if you're going to open mic, there's going to be other artists there.
Yep.
And maybe you find someone who's a bass player and you're like, oh, I need a bass in my band. So you can, join on the group with me or whatnot. That's a good way to kind of build what you're doing or build relationships with artists. And if you're trying to make your own music and you're like, man, I really want bass on the song, but I don't have a bass and I don't want to pay to go and get a studio musician, a session musician to record it. If you find a bassist at an open mic and say, hey, do you make your own music or whatnot? Oh yeah. It's like, oh, you want to record bass on my song?
Yep.
Especially if they come up to you afterwards and like, man, that song was dope. I really like it. It's like, hey, do you want to maybe record bass for it? Or hey, do you maybe want to record drums for it? That's a good way to get other tracks to flesh out your song without necessarily having to pay for it.
Exactly. Or they can point you to somebody that they know, right?
Yeah. Or they can point you to somebody that they know. And on top of that, if one of the things you're struggling with is potentially a ride to get to other locations, the more artists that you can set up carpools or whatnot to have someone pick you up on the way to the open mic, or if you make good friends with somebody and like, oh yeah, we got this show coming out this weekend. Love through there. It's like, oh yeah, I'd love to go. I would love to also be there beforehand, like talk to you guys, like see the whole band, talk to the group, maybe help you unload or whatnot. If you help pick me up, like I'll help you set up your drum kit or anything like that. Boom, now you got a ride there. And while you're there, you can talk to other musicians, talk to the venue, talk to just kind of put yourself out there more. That maybe allows you more options to get rides places or whatnot, or grow your group. A lot of musicians know that it's a struggle to get going, and it is local scenes are very community focused, and it's about
very
the people.
Much so. Yeah.
Any scene that I've been a part of or have talked to or know other people who are a part of, it's always been, I'm not going to say it's guaranteed it's going to be like this, but from my experience, it's always been a very helpful. So if you need a ride, odds are somebody might give you a ride.
Absolutely.
If you need help recording something or getting a new part in, a lot of times local musicians will jump at the opportunity to be like, oh man, I like that song a lot. Yeah, I got an idea for the drums, so I want to jump in on the drums.
Yep.
I mean, we have a friend, Kevin, who records with you, Brandon.
Yeah. Shout out Kevin.
Yeah. That's about the 5th episode we brought him
I
up
think
on.
so, dude. We're fans.
We just like his music.
We're fans.
But the drummer on the album was a guy who was, was friends with Kevin. And he's like, man, I really like the song. I have an idea for the song. And I mean, he came in and played drums for Drunk, which...
Shout out to Torrin.
So he just came in and he just played drums on it, composed the whole thing, and it really fleshed out the song.
Definitely.
And that song is not released yet, but keep an eye out on Kevin Allen's page.
We're going to leak it at the end of the episode.
No, we're not. But no, it's a great way to get other people involved. That's how he got me involved on bass on that song. That's how he got his guitarist involved. A lot of it are just people who are excited about the music, and it's all about the people. So just try to get into it as much as you possibly can. Aside from that, anything you want to talk about performing?
No, I think you pretty much nailed everything. But like we were even talking about earlier, if you don't have a car, you do carpool, you trade something in return, right? I want to keep bringing this up just so that people know that it's not like this is going to be a free ride, right? Like
you might have to stay until the end of the set. Now you're killing time.
Exactly, because now you have to stay till the end of the set to help the drummer tear down. Or you have to stay till the end of the set because you want to be there to support somebody, or somebody wants to be there to support somebody, and then you have to be there to wait for the ride to come through, right?
Or maybe you have to work the merch table.
Exactly.
Because, they gave you a ride, so I'll work the merch table for you.
Exactly. And there, like I said, it's all trade-offs. It's all trade-offs. It's all opportunity cost. And I just want to keep reiterating that for everybody too, because you will pay in different ways. But if you don't mind paying in those other ways, so be it. Have
fun. If you have the time and you lack other things, use your time. If you have the money but lack time, use your money.
Exactly.
If you have, experience but lack whatever, use your experience. Whatever you can do to overcome the other limitations is what you need to do.
Exactly. And it's like
position yourself to leverage what you've got.
Yeah. And like we were talking about at the beginning of the episode, is that it's only for a moment in time, right? That you have to make these sacrifices. Maybe you can keep making them along the way for certain people, but generally the more you build up monetarily, the more you build up with your resources around you, these things start to kind of fall off a little bit, right? And then it becomes a little bit more succinct and streamlined. But at first, like if you don't have the resources, then these are the things that you have to do. And like, unfortunately, it's kind of paying your dues. That's kind of what it is. I'm not a big fan of paying your dues all the time, but lack of a better way to say it, that's kind of like what's going on, right? But yeah, I just want to put that out there.
Yeah. Moving on to like the last thing we have is kind of like marketing, social media, putting your stuff out there, getting recordings, organizing social medias, whatnot. To start off with, most of us have these insanely powerful bricks in our pockets called phones that can do way, way more than they ever had before. In fact,
I've never used this before.
They've been killer albums just recorded on phones.
It's true.
So there's just so much power to it. But in terms of marketing, like you have access to pretty much any social media platform. Most of them have really solid cameras in them. So you can, take them to a gig, hand someone your phone and say, hey, could you take pictures of me for your marketing or promotional materials or whatnot. There's software. We talked about an earlier episode about every software ideas that you should know that can help you out. That, one of them we mentioned is Canva, and you can get it for free, and it can give you a bunch of different templates and assets you can do for your self-promotion. Talked about tools and software every independent artist should know and use on episode 7. So if you're looking for different ways, most of them are for free that you can use to then market yourself and make a better front of your music. That would be a good episode to check out to learn more about that.
Definitely.
But even more so than that, if you want to have a computer, go more in depth and maybe not have access to it, or a quiet place where you can do internet or things like that, most libraries have free and open computers, and also they have free office spaces or quiet rooms that you can go into and get good work done. Also, it's a library, so it's full of books. So
libraries still exist.
They do.
They still exist. They never get talked about. Never get talked about.
I love libraries.
I do too.
But you can go there and you can read books like Marketing for Dummies.
Yeah, straight up.
Yeah.
They'll have it. Guaranteed.
Exactly. Try these, try these things out. That's always a good resource you can go to kind of get things done. You can use the computers to get your work done, post things, respond to people, put your stuff together. So on top of that,
I want to make another point on our marketing, if you don't mind. We're going to go back to the school thing. If you're in school, you can actually go to your IT department and go rent out cameras. You can go rent out field microphones. You can go rent out a bunch of different things. I think you can even rent out laptops. You have resources at these institutions that you pay for within your tuition. Like, use it to your advantage, right? It's almost free. I mean, you pay for it, but it's almost free at this point, right? Depending on how much you use it, because as you keep using it, the amount that you pay will the amount that you use it will supersede the amount that you're paying, because you're paying a baseline price, right? It's not like you're going there every time to rent something out, you're not paying $50, right? You get it for free for a day, right?
Yeah.
Just make sure you take care of it, of course, but you have access to these things where you can shoot a video. Like, okay, we have the camera for one day. We're going to go shoot in downtown Ann Arbor at all these different locations. We're going to rip off the videos from the camera, and then we're going to return the camera and we're going to edit it all together. That's all we got time for, right?
Yep.
But it's all free, which is awesome. So make sure you utilize your school resources if you're in school.
And even if you're you're not in school, like we said earlier, how you can approach a school or a student and say, hey, I will give you my time and give you your creative viewpoint or whatever to try out mixing and recording and all this stuff with my music. You can do the same with your imaging and go like, hey, you're a photo student, you're a video student. I will give you my time and a little bit of money or whatever, or I'll buy you pizza.
Or a marketing student.
Or a marketing student, yeah. And just say, hey, use me as a guinea pig. I have a couple of, like, these are my focuses and my guidelines, which when you're out, you can say, like, when you get a job after this or whatnot, you're going to have these guidelines or whatnot. So you don't necessarily have to hand over the reins completely. But you can get someone who is learning these things and is more knowledgeable. Like, as you said, the whole, like, hey, we've got it for a day, so we got to structure that, hit these locations. You might not know how to do all this. They probably do. So it can be good to get a video student involved in the program. And a lot of times they'll do it for cheap or for free. Or for pizza. A lot of times for pizza.
Seriously, for a free meal. That's it.
Especially if it's stuffed crust.
Ooh. Oh, man. Now I'm hungry.
Right? Going back to AI too, you can also use AI tools to
you can
get ideas for marketing.
Do we use AI tools, Sean?
I do use AI tools.
There you go.
They're very powerful.
They're very powerful and they save a lot of time.
We are going to be doing an episode on AI in the future once we really know more about it, but it's just growing and changing so quickly.
It is. And a lot of AI stuff out right now isn't actually truly AI. It's more of like a very marketing jargon term, but there are true AI tools out there too. So we'll kind of dive more into that later.
Yeah, we'll do more later. But that kind of wraps up the kind of ideas and uses that we've thought of throughout the whole making the music, promoting the music, performing the music, that whole process. If there are things that you can think of or things that you have done to kind of push back these limitations or do it on a budget or whatever, please reach out. You can DM us on any socials or Music Makers Cookbook on everything. Or you can email us at podcast@musicmakerscookbook.com. We'd love to hear from you and kind of more things about what you've been doing. What recipes have you been following to, be successful in this? But a lot of it does hinge around a kind of self-accountability and a DIY mentality.
It does.
It's up to you to get it done. It's up to you to do it yourself, to push it forward. You have to go out and market. You have to go out and spend your time. You have to go out and reach out to these students to get access to their studios or their expertise or their cameras or whatever.
You're wearing all the hats.
Exactly. Once again, there's a lot of other musicians out there doing it. Always learning, always trying new things, always DIYing. So you can reach out and talk about these things with our artists, see what they're doing, build a sense of community where maybe, oh yeah, I went to this school to get this thing done. So, oh crap, now I know where I can go. I'll hit them up. Or, oh, I use this photographer and he gave me a really good rate for it or whatever. Oh crap, I'll go to him. Talking about this, sharing these ideas is always a good idea. And if you want to really do it yourself and you have that much time and you're interested in the topics, like I'm interested in photography, I'm interested in marketing, I'm interested in recording and mixing, you can always go to YouTube. Yeah,
YouTube University is, it's a good resource, man. That's why they call it YouTube University. You could spend a lot of time on there learning. This actually does require some sort of learning curve. So because you have to be willing to, you have to know enough to sort out the shit from the good stuff. And I do mean shit. There's a lot of bad stuff out there, but there's also a lot of good stuff out there. And that's up for you to decide which is which, right?
For example, be careful when watching videos on how to wire XLRs.
Yes.
Because they might have the wrong layout. So
I fell victim and now I must go make it up. And now I'm paying with more time. So,
but you're enjoying it now. So
I am enjoying it now, actually. So it's been a lot of fun. And actually I wanted to solder some more stuff. I guess not redo it, but this is a good practice for me. And now I know never to trust a YouTube video on soldering. So,
but like anything on the internet, you have to do your due diligence.
You have to do your due diligence. And I think mine came from, like, this is an important topic. I think mine came from a lot of impatience and just wanting to get it done. So I found the first thing and didn't vet my resources. Right. And one of the things, since I know I've talked about a lot about school, and usually I'm not a huge fan of school, but school teaches a lot of vetting your resources and making sure that they're credible. Right. And I did not follow that. And now I have to go redo everything. And like, just imagine, like, I have to redo 6 cables. That's going to take like hour, 2 hours max. Right. Imagine that you're buying something for $20,000. Imagine that you're signing up for this huge show that'll change your life. Imagine that you're going to the studio for a week straight and you're paying like $10,000, right?
Imagine all the people living on the world.
Imagine you.
John Lennon,
right? And like just imagine that the stakes are higher, and you probably want to cite your sources a little bit more than that, right? You want to spend more than just 2 minutes doing that. So, like I said, there's a time investment involved in that, so you're paying in time. So there's always the trade-off. I think I'm done talking about trade-offs. I swear to God, that's my last time saying it.
I'll come up with one more.
I might throw one more in there.
Yeah,
we got a little bit of time. I'm gonna throw one more in there.
But no, yeah, if you want to take the dive and learn all these things yourself, there's plenty of ways for you to do that. For example, you can look back at some of our past episodes, as I brought up episode 7 about this software you can use to market your own music. That's a great resource that you can then look at other ways to, get the job done yourself. And if you're interested, or if you just know it needs to be done and you don't have the budget, but you got the time, you can go and take that route.
Exactly.
There's nothing saying you can't. There's nothing saying you shouldn't.
Yep.
And on top of all these resources online to learn, there's also resources online to just do everything else that we talked about. We talked about finding places to record, finding places to get mixing and mastering done.
Transportation.
Yeah, all that stuff. There's ways to solve these problems online. There's a lot of ways to do that. There's, like, if you're looking for a ride, there's a bunch of carpooling or ride sharing groups and communities and whatnot. If you're looking to DIY things, there's a bunch of groups and communities and Reddit subreddits and all these things of people who are also doing the same thing. So even if you're not in an area with much of a scene, you're always closer to like-minded musicians and people doing it than you think you are.
Just in your pocket.
Just in your pocket.
Just in your pocket.
It's a powerful brick.
It is. It's a powerful brick. Mine barely works though, so it's time for a new phone for me.
Yep.
Little tangent. I'm sorry.
Nah, it's all good.
Can't even take pictures, dude. It's bad.
You have pictures on it?
I do have pictures, but it takes like 30 seconds for me to take like a picture. I have to open up the camera and I have to wait like 2 to 3 business days to use it. Swear to God, dude, it's terrible.
God, it's slower than a Polaroid.
It's terrible, man. I need a new phone. It's about 5-6 years old now, so it's probably about time. People have made fun of my phone, so
it gets the job done.
It does.
So
it does. It might leave me stranded one day. We'll see.
Well, I'll find out. Hopefully, like hopefully
we'll see. Maybe in Milan or Milan. Milan. I'm sorry. I just totally detoured this episode.
It's okay. You are all right.
Thank you.
I mean, that kind of ends up wrapping up today's episode.
Yeah.
Of the Music Makers Cookbook.
That's the one.
That's the one. Not musicians. No, the Music Makers Cookbook. But yeah, remember that, like, if you have limited resources, you always have something potentially that you can leverage to help accommodate on those limitations. Trade-offs.
I had to say it one more time.
You had to do it one more time. But if you kind of keep these ideas and these strategies in mind, there's always a way for you to push forward and make things work. And as I said, if there are things that you do that are we didn't list but help kind of circumvent these limitations or these problems that you have, please message us or leave a comment on the video, especially if you're watching this on YouTube. Leave a comment so that other people can then go down and read and kind of see other ideas and other things that.
Yeah, let's build that community together that we've been talking about, that online community. Let's make a hub. Let's help each other out. Seriously.
Yeah. So speaking of which, if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, follow, leave a review, anything you can do to kind of help support this channel so it gets in front of more artists. Once again, you can specifically just directly share it with other artists that you think would get value out of it, like you're getting value out of it. It really helps us help more people and get the word out in front of more independent artists so that we can all make a living doing what we love, and that is making music.
Absolutely.
And doing all that. So thank you for coming to our kitchen.
Thank you.
Thank you for cooking with us. Until then.
You just got chefed up.
That's not how we usually end these.
It's not. I was feeling it today.
You just got chefed up. This is so 90s.
Feels like something that'd be on like Disney Channel or something.
Dude.
You just got served. And
my name is Sean,
Montana episode.
And you're watching Disney Channel. You've just been chefed up.
Did you really just do the wand?
Maybe if you watch the YouTube video, you'll see.
That's awesome. Oh my God! What an end of the episode. I'm sorry. Continue our outro sequence. I suppose.
Last thing I'm going to say from the outro is that we've gotten some recommendations on future topics from other listeners and musicians and artists that watched this episode. One of them was from something you've worked with.
Yeah.
And she asked us to kind of go over kind of ideas of what to do when random things come up where you don't really have, like, it's out of your control. It's out of other like you don't really have a lot of options. It's out of your control on these circumstances.
Yep.
This can be, personal, related to music, be it in studio and live show. There's always potential things happening that you don't have control over. So this is a very broad idea, which we really enjoy, but we'd love to dive more deep and focus on specific things that maybe you've encountered.
Yeah.
So if you could also reach out to us and tell us, what are some situations that you've been in your music career where things happen that you can't plan for, where you don't necessarily know how to react right away.
And how did you react to it?
And how did you react
in that moment? Back against the wall. I have two options, two paths I can take, right? Which path did you take? How did you react to it? And how did you handle it?
Yeah, because we'd like to take these specific examples and kind of make an episode about it and flesh this idea out more.
Yep.
So if you want to be a part of what we do, add your ingredients to our recipe so we can get cooking together, that would be fantastic.
That'd be awesome. And this might not be a next week's episode. This might take a couple weeks to cultivate. So be on the lookout for this episode if it interests you.
Exactly.
Maybe it might be next week. Maybe we'll get a fuckload of submissions or something. But for now, we're going to say that maybe a couple weeks from now, this might be an episode. So if you're looking forward to that and you've experienced something like that, I'm sure you have at this point, please let us know. We'd love to talk about it.
For sure.
Yeah.
So that's it. Thank you for joining us in our kitchen and cooking up with us.
Bon appetit. I'm not going to say that you just got chefed up. I can't do that.
No,
Bon appetit.
Bon appetit.